Why hello there, and welcome to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today we're looking at the M46 Patton, a rank 5, 6.7 battle rating medium tank. And as with all reviews, before we get started, all the various parts of this review are time-stamped down below, so feel free to check that out. And if there's something you want to watch a certain part of the review, by all means head off where you want to go. But if you want to hear the more tech head portion of this review, let's get started. So the M46 Patton was designed to replace the M26 and the M26 Pershing and the M4 Sherman, because when the M26 Pershing was brought in, it was classified as a heavy tank, but it was decided it didn't have what they wanted for a heavy tank. It just didn't meet standards. So they said, okay, well, we need to design a new tank. And the M46 Patton was the result. They basically took the Pershing and upgraded it, and it looks very, very similar to the Pershing. About 800 of this variant of tank were built. In total, about, I think, 1,160, I think is the count, were built, and the final 360 were in a different modification. So this Patton was kind of the post-World War II American mainstay medium tank. This was the tank that would roll out. However, this tank really only saw combat service in Korea and was sort of in service until maybe 1957, when bigger and better things came along, like the M47 and things like that. So it has kind of a short window of use, but it filled that role. And the skin that my Patton's wearing is courtesy of Stalingrad 34 Rus, and he actually also did the M103 skin, but in the last video I forgot. I'll link to his page on War Thunder Live, if I remember, of course. But let's talk more about this tank. So like I said, rank 5, 6.7 battle rating, and it's one of these weird tanks where it's rank 5 but it has a low battle rating. It's kind of on par with all the German machines that have the German rank 5s that have a 7.0 battle rating. I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing get bumped up to maybe 7.0 probably. But it's 43.7 tons, 810 horsepower at 2,800 RPM, and it has a max speed of 47 kilometers per hour. So all that being said, it has a power to weight ratio of about 18 or so, which is pretty good. The engine, it's a big powerful engine, and the top speed is pretty respectable. So this thing is certainly not slow, and it's pretty quick, and it turns fairly well. There's times when I've been able to keep the tracks just rolling in a circuit, like doing a donut, if you can get the engine power right and just going in a little donut. It's a very maneuverable medium tank. It's just a very solid tank in terms of top speed and maneuverability and hull traverse and things like that. Maximum inclination of 26 degrees, turret rotation speed of 24 degrees a second. So it's the same as the Shermans, and 24 degrees is pretty good. Like the King Tigers have 18 degrees. 18 degrees. 24 degrees is pretty good. Vertical guidance, 10 degrees of depression, 20 degrees of elevation. That's standard for American mediums, and that's pretty good. 10 degrees gun depression is pretty good. So now let's talk about the armor. The armor is kind of interesting for the Patton. It has 101 millimeters front, or listed 101 millimeters of front armor, 76 from the side, 51 at the rear for the hull, 101 at the turret, 76, 76 respectively for sides and rear. Well, what is it? Okay, so we have 101.6 upper glacis here, but you'll notice something. It's sloped back at 45 degrees, which, in reality isn't that much. The armor is about 130 or so millimeters. However, there are spots where the armor isn't sloped at all, just about. 29 degrees, that's hardly anything, and it's 113 millimeters. You also have a machine gun port, which is basically the actual thickness of the armor. It means that this front plate of the tank isn't that durable. And you have this lower plate that's 76.2 millimeters, but it's sloped, so it's also very small, so that's not really where they're going to shoot you. They're definitely going to want to shoot you right here in your face. Right in your chest, right here. Because, as we'll see when we go to the layout, this is a prime time place to hit a tank. Now, the front of the turret. You do have this big fat gun mantlet, which is 114 millimeters, and depending on where you hit it, is anywhere between 114 and a little over 300. That's if you hit like the extreme edges. Behind it, we also have another set of armor, which is 101 millimeters as well, but that's not really sloped at all. It just kind of sits behind the gun mantlet. Now you'll notice that that armor doesn't actually cover the entire sort of area around the gun. There are blank spots here and here. However, you still need to get through 114 millimeters to take advantage of those holes behind this plate. And it just so happens that when you're shooting there, actually the base of the muzzle of the gun actually kind of helps protect that. It is a very fat muzzle. So, and then you have the actual, I guess, main portion of the turret, which is 101 millimeters as well, but it is sloped. So the shoulders and the cheeks of the turret are over 200, except right on the edge where it's 140 or so, but that's going to be a tough shot. So the Patton is very penetratable in the through the gun mantlet. However, you don't want to hit it to the extreme right or extreme left, because that's where the you have this extra plate behind it, and now you're trying to shoot through two plates that are equaling over 200 millimeters of armor, which it might be difficult, might not be. You're better off just pounding one right through this front plate, which is 101 to 130 millimeters. You know, so that's something to keep in mind. Side of the turret, 76.2. Side of the hull, 76.2. It is interesting that the back half of the hull is only 50.8. The front half of the hull is 76.2. So if that matters to the tank you're using, keep that in mind. But for most tanks that this thing sees, that won't really be an issue. You know, rear, 76.2. 22.2 on the back of the chassis, but you know, like I've said multiple times, that if you get hit in the rear or the sides and at this battle rating, you're toast anyway, so not much you can do. So that's kind of the armor. From the front, this tank isn't bad. The armor on the hull is lacking, but the turret is actually fairly significant. It's not unpennable, but it's also, you have to hit it in the right spot to penetrate. Right, so it's not just something you can send a shell at. The front plate, you can absolutely just send a shell right through that. So let's pull up the layout and see what happens if you do penetrate. This is why I said it's bad that the front plate isn't that thick. You have a whole fat stack of ammo right behind the front plate, behind the driver and the machine gunner, below the loader, the commander, and the gunner. And there's more ammo in the turret, which doesn't mean a lot. It is behind the gun mantlet a little bit, mostly behind the gun mantlet. But this ammo is kind of unprotected. If the enemy are able to put a shot into your lower upper glacis, it's going to hit this ammo and going to cause some serious problems. Also, I mean, obviously the engine is on level with the front of the tank, you know, and that's, if you get penetrated here, it's likely to gut your tank from bow to stern and cause a fire at least. So, and it might, you know, kill your gunner on the way through if it's, depending on how you shoot. Like, if you're angled like this and he fires through here, it's maybe going to explode in here and kill everybody. The point is that this tank, when it's engaging against targets and it can't use its sort of speed and maneuverability, it needs to be hull down just to give you sort of that fighting chance, because the armor isn't that good. It's not good enough to protect you against German guns or Russian guns. And what I found is that usually if a German or Russian gun penetrates your upper glacis, you're kind of toast. Either you're so disabled that you can't fight back, or you're just dead. You know, one of the two. There's some tanks that, you know, even then, I guess that's true for most tanks. If you get penetrated in the front, right through your upper plate, usually that's very bad news for everyone inside. I guess American tanks penetrating your upper glacis is less of a problem, because usually their shells don't fragment, whereas German and Russian shells fragment inside the tank or explode due to the AP shells. So that's why I say that you need to be hull down in this tank, or be using the speed and maneuverability to get around and be unexpected. But like I said, you have the driver to the right of the gun, machine gunner to the left, loader to the right, gunner and commander to the left. So I guess if you don't want to take another shot, try and punch one through the extreme left of the turret, maybe hit the gunner. If he's hull down, that's probably your best bet. You could go for the loader and ammo shot, but if it doesn't set off the ammo rack, he'll fire again. So usually I would go here and then maybe go here if I get a good solid penetrating hit and I knock out his gunner and his commander. Well, next shell over here, loader, ammo, that should knock out the tank. If you see his upper glacis, just send one right through it. Hit his engine, hit the ammo, whatever you want. That'll be a knockout blow. So, yeah, rear mounted transmission as well. So it's going to be very difficult to fire this tank if you don't, hit this. So firing through this upper glacis is a really good idea. It also means that the driver is actually a little bit more exposed because the transmission isn't going to eat any shells for him. Now, all that being said, the armor on this tank is kind of deceptive because I feel like it's just thick enough where it maintains all the elements of speed that makes this tank, I think, pretty decent. But it's not so thick that it's going to save you. It relies on being angled and being weird, and also forcing the enemy to take like snapshots and not really get the opportunity to line up a shot and really aim. You want to be blitzing around a corner angled like this and firing all the way type deal. Or you want to be so far out, or else you want to be on the flank, engaging targets from a position of safety where it's like you're popping out, their turret's pointing the wrong way, and you send a shell right through them. And you'll see a little bit of that in the replays. So now let's talk about the gun. It has a 90mm M3A1 cannon with 70 rounds of ammunition. No machine guns on this tank. You get the choice of a standard AP or a fragmenting AP shell, which has 161mm penetration at 10 meters, 151 at 500. 135 at 1500 and 130 at 2000. Basically, this shell is good enough for the sides of, German tanks. And that's basically it. Maybe the sides of like some or most Russian tanks, but the fronts maybe not. You could probably the turrets of Russian tanks are usually 120 millimeters thick, but they're sloped a little bit, and if you don't hit them plumb, you probably won't penetrate. Also, the weight of the shell and the muzzle velocity isn't all that great. 853 meters per second, that's fine, but we can do better than that. You have the M82 shot. All right, notice that it does have less penetration than the previous shell. Same muzzle velocity, same weight. I think same weight. Hold on, let me just make sure. 10.9, 10.8. Yeah, I knew it was. I was just making sure. Penetration 157 at 10 meters, 146 at 500, 129 at 1500, and 222 millimeters at 2000. So it's in the same boat as this one. It's adequate for the size of German tanks, and it might be inadequate for the front of Russian tanks. And it's certainly inadequate for the front of German tanks. You really need to be, if you're using these two shells, you really need to be flanking. That's just really your goal in life, is to flank. Because and this AP shell will probably give you that knockout punch where if you penetrate the side of a tank, he's likely to get knocked out because the shell's going to explode inside. This fragmenting shell, less so, but, it's still a big heavy shell. Well, it's not that heavy, but you get my drift. It's heavier than the other shells, at least. So now we come down to the APCR, which is what kind of makes this gun, in my opinion, tick. You have the M304 shot, which is a APCR round, 7.6 kilograms, which is kind of heavy compared to, considering the AP shell is 10.9, this is 7.6. That's not a huge drop-off as APCR shells go. 1,021 meters per second muzzle velocity, 254 millimeters penetration at 10 meters, 241 at 500, 194 at 1,500, and 171 at 2,000 meters. So that's good. That's very good penetration values. This is a good shot to have. Once you upgrade from the M82 to the M304, that's good, because now you can engage all those targets that I've mentioned before from the front and have a pretty good chance of success. The front of Russian turrets won't be much of an issue. The front of German turrets won't be much of an issue. You can penetrate the front of a King Tiger out past 1,500 yards, or 1,500 meters, sorry, and almost to 2,000 meters. So that's really good, right? But when you get to APCR, I feel like if you're going to use an APCR shell, use the highest penetration APCR shell. So why do I say that? when you switch to APCR shell, you're already giving up the idea that the shell is going to be incredibly damaging when it hits the tank. With an APCR shell, your goal is to penetrate and then hit key components and sort of surgically kill the enemy tank, or hit ammo racks and hit key things. AP shells, you want to penetrate and then let the shell do the work, right? So I'm already going to be using an APCR shell. You could make the argument that this is a heavier APCR shell than the M332 shell, which is what I generally use. Alright, the M332 shot is an APCR shell that weighs 5.6 kilograms, so it's about 2 kilograms lighter than the M304 shot. 1,178 meters per second muzzle velocity, so it travels faster. It travels, let me make sure the number's right, about 150 meters per second faster, which, can make a difference at long range in terms of being able to get the shell on target. Armor penetration wise, 269 millimeters at 10 meters, 250 at 500, 214 at 1500, and 182 at 2000. So this shell basically guarantees that you can penetrate the front of a King Tiger past 2000, well, basically just over 2000 meters away. Alright, which is pretty good. Now both shells kind of sport that ability. However, this shell has higher close range penetration, and I like that because it means that if the front of the King Tiger is angled, let's say his hull is angled at you, with that extra penetration you have a better chance of penetrating that side armor. Alright, because I've had plenty of times where the M304 shot is bounced, but the M332 shot, because I'll be carrying both, when I was carrying both I was using them as like a comparison test. I was seeing, I was firing the M304, and if it didn't penetrate, then I would use the M332 and try and fire the exact same shot. Obviously that's not scientific, but I found that there is a certain breakpoint where the M332 shot is more efficient at dealing with angled side armor of like King Tigers and things like that, and a lot of people angle their King Tigers. And for the front of a King Tiger, they both get the job done. So I'd already consigned myself to the fact I was going to be using APCR to deal with threats from the front, so I just said, I'm going to use the best APCR in my opinion. Now, I encourage you to try both and come up with your own thoughts. I just prefer the M332 because I've had more success dealing with targets that are angled towards me, which is kind of weird, but it has enough penetration to overcome some of that angling. Alright, and the muzzle velocity is good. It helps you engage targets at range, which is really nice. The shell gets there in a hurry. So that's the ammunition choice. You have an HE shell, don't bother. It's basically the same as the AP shell, just has 19 millimeters penetration and doesn't do a hell of a lot. I don't think it's effective really in almost any situation, as far as I can tell. I don't even think it's effective knocking out guns. It might be, but in my experience, it wasn't. So, take that as you will, but I wouldn't carry any of this. I would carry, maybe you carry the M304, maybe you carry the M332. I don't think the M82 or the T33 shot are worth it to carry. I think you use those to get these, and then you just kind of pick your poison. I prefer the M332, but I could see someone saying the M304 is better. I just personally have found more success with the M332. So there you go. So that's the gun. Rate of fire, you'll fire around every 11.4 seconds with a decent crew, and as a whole, all those pieces that I've discussed combine to make a pretty solid medium tank. This isn't a heavy tank, so it's not going to be bouncing shells, and hanging and banging with the big boys, but it's effective as a medium tank. Panthers, you'll gut Panthers. I like this tank over Panthers any day. It's just a very, very tough very durable, very, well, I say durable. I don't mean to say durable. It's a very tough tank when it's faced with Panthers, as in, you can penetrate the front of their tank and their gun mantlet. You can penetrate them anywhere. They're going to struggle on your gun mantlet. So this thing will just gut Panthers. You'll fire right through their upper glacis. You can shoot through the side of their, the right side of their gun mantlet and kill their gunner or whatever. You can basically just pick them apart. Now against King Tigers, this thing is a little more difficult. However, what you have is a ton of speed and a quick turret and APCR shells that give you that penetration at range. So it's not an impossible task. It's actually, I think, a fairly even fight, because you have the ability to penetrate them at the same range as they can penetrate you easily, and you're fast enough where you can get places quicker, you can flank, and your rate of fire is pretty good, 11.4 seconds. So, you know, I feel like this tank is pretty good. You know, it's a very it's an above average tank, that's for sure. So you need to get used to and if you've been playing up the American mediums and the sort of the Sherman 76s and stuff like that, you'll have an idea of how to play this thing. It's not going to take a hit from the front. You need to angle to give yourself a chance, but if you give the gun a chance, it'll go to work. Alright, so in terms of an overview, the armor from the front is meh. You know, the upper glaze isn't very good. The gun mantlet's pretty good, and you can use that to your advantage if you're hull down. Sides and rear are paper, like always. And in terms of speed and mobility, this thing sacrifices a little bit of armor to be pretty quick and have good traverse. The turret turns really fast, and the gun is pretty good. I do like this 90mm gun. So that's kind of what you need to know. That's the nutshell. So without further ado, let's see some replays. So here we are in a simulator battle on Cuban, and I'm driving the M46 Patton. And like I've said in previous videos, and I remember to say this time, I've been really perusing skins and things like that, and I'm going to try and have, every time I do a tank review, I'm going to try and have a cool skin, or a skin I like, whether it's historical, semi-historical, or whatever. So I guess that's something to look forward to, and I always try and remember to link people in the description, but if I ever forget, just holler at me and I'll do it, or Phil will do it. Phil will probably do it. But like I said, simulator battle, I'm driving the Patton around, and I've loaded, in this game I had loaded all M332 shells. This was sort of towards the end of my adventure in this tank, trying to really formulate what I thought. And I've decided at this point that I'm going to try and go with just the M332 shot, because I found myself almost entirely using APCR, which indicated to me that, you know, it's just, you know, I don't need to carry the AP, I should just carry all APCR, you know, I'll have more ammunition that way. And then from there I decided, well, you know, I used the M3304, or that one, the other APCR shell, and it you know, it's a good shell, it gets the job done, but there were situations where I didn't penetrate, and I thought I should have. So I was like, let's get more penetration, shall we? Because you know, if you aim well and you hit like ammo racks and things like that, you'll knock tanks out. So the rest of the team has kind of made a more aggressive push up to my right, and I've decided to move up, kind of move forward and help out this push. Now, the issue I'm going to run into is that this tank doesn't deal well when its armor is going to have to save it, right? You don't want to put this tank in a position where armor is the only answer, because it just won't win, right? And I take a hit in the side there because there's a Panther, and he just knocked out my teammate up there, and there's also a Panther coming through that valley where the AI just came through. And you know, I'm just going to get toasted right here, because there's just not anything I can do. You know, it's a lot of times these medium tank duels come down to who hits who first, and I'm trying to sort of duck out of the way here, but nah, I'm pretty stuffed. So you don't want to put this tank in a position where the armor has to save you. You want to put it in a position where the armor, you kind of want to give the armor a chance, if you know what I mean. Like, you want to be moving quickly, you want to be angling, you want to be weird, you know, and doing weird things so that the enemy don't have a chance to really to button you down like those Panthers did. But, you know, medium tank, simulator battle, get 2 spawns, which is nice. And now I'm, at this point in the battle, I was thinking, okay, you know, I need to rethink how I'm doing this. I was way too I was way too frontal with that. I was in the middle of a wide open field, and the enemy, I didn't give the enemy enough time to show up, really. I went too aggressive too fast. I should have waited for allied tanks to sort of push to that ridge, because where my allies were going, they couldn't cover me at all. So it would have been better if I had waited more, And then once the Allies had pushed around that corner, like they are now, then push forward, because then I have support. And the enemy are going to have to deal with targets to their sides. Now what I'm doing here is I'm kind of trying to scope out where these enemies are. I'm coming back over to the ridge where I was previously overwatching, but I'm not going to do the same thing because that's boring. Instead, I'm going to kind of skirt right near the middle of the map, because I know there's lots of targets over here. I'm just looking for my first victim right now. There's a heavy tank down there, but there's going to be AI littered everywhere. I guess did I spot something right there? I think I did. I don't know. I can't tell. I might have just YOLO'd a shot. I tend to do that from time to time. But the enemy seem to have made a more aggressive push in the center and in the bottom part of the map, because our forces in the north, other than those two Panthers, were completely unopposed. We took that road and then kept marching on. So it's pretty apparent that the enemy are down over here. Now there is a medium tank directly in front of me, and I come over the hill, and my first shell didn't do anything. It wasn't a very well aimed shell, but you know, I'm sticking right on his ass, and I'm going to try and use this engine power to circle and get around him. There goes his horizontal drive, so he, you know, that was a good crit. I'm just going to get right up next to him, put my gun inside him, and have a go. Alright, it didn't knock him out, but there goes his loader and his commander. He has to be trying to repair probably, so I'm just going to back up and give him one right in the side of the turret. There we go. Nice little cook. Alright, so there's the first one. Now there was enemies farther down this path, and there's also artillery raining in, so you got to keep moving. You put this thing in gear and keep on pushing forward. Because that's something this tank really does well, is when the enemy are on the back foot, or you have a breakthrough where you can get into the enemy position, this tank will do really well. Because it has a punchy gun, and it has the speed, the turret traverse, and maneuverability to really kind of negotiate a complicated situation, which is nice. Now there's a bunch of tanks spotted down over here by our cap, and they're actually going to make a move for our cap. However, there's going to be a Panther 2 who's going to be isolated, and I'm going to find him before too long. I just saw his smoke. I just saw his muzzle smoke, so I know where he is. He's right between those trees, and there we go. Send a shell on the way. First shell lights him on fire. The APCR round from this 90mm gun sets Panthers on fire like it's no one's business. You just hit that front plate, and the shell will gut the tank from stem to stern, or bow to stern, and no problem. So let the smoke I can't speak. Let the smoke clear a little bit, and then send another shell, which lit him on fire again. Back up to avoid return fire. I am taking artillery fire as well, so I'm going to have to send this shell as soon as I can. That was a poorly aimed shell, and I stuck around a little bit too long, got tracked. I should have just waited for the artillery to come in. That guy's not going anywhere. But next shell goes in and knock him right out. Get the last of his crew members. And you'll find that a lot of your kills are going to be like that, where you, instead of, you know, just detonating the tank and killing everybody in one go, it's more often that you surgically destroy the enemy. Your first shell gets their gunner and their driver. Your second shell gets their loader and their commander. So it is important to pay attention to those messages and that say, you know, oh, this guy's dead, this guy's dead, this guy's wounded, and kind of pinpoint the guys that are still functioning and target them. Because that's one way to knock a tank out, is just knock out the crew. So almost prepared now. Another 2 seconds or so. There we go. And now would be a good idea to get down here and try and support our allies. However, there's a ZSU 57-2, which is going to cause some serious problems for our enemy. Alright. So now, basically we've cleared our cap circle. The enemy, if they're respawning, are going to be in the southern part of the map. So now's a good time to move forward and more aggressively push the issue. But the reason I picked this replay is because it kind of showed a couple things. This is a close map. Cuban's a rather small map. But you got to see that this tank is an effective knife fighter. The engine power allows you to do a lot of different things, which are really good. And the long-range performance of the gun is pretty good. These APCR shells, against its counterpart, medium tank counterparts, completely guts them. And against heavy tanks, it can be effective, and you'll see more of that later. But at the moment, what I'm doing is we're capturing B, which is fine. I really don't want to take part in capturing B. I'm a strong proponent of if allied forces are capturing a zone, I don't want to go help. And the reason is that if they're able to capture a zone, that's great, and they probably will. But if we're all sitting in the zone and we get bombed, the game can turn in a split second. And this Panther 2 was causing problems for those boys. So I came on over here, and my first shell goes in and causes him to back up. I believe I got his gunner. So now I'm going to put the speed of this thing to use and more aggressively push on him. I'm actually going to get a pretty massive frame stutter, which results in him getting the first shot, which, you know, is awkward, but the armor takes it. And my first shell goes in. Doesn't do a whole lot, but I am able to set him on fire and knock him out, which is nice. And now his corpse will slowly roll away as we continue to shoot it to push it down the hill. I think that's a bug, by the way, that tank corpses keep moving, like at the same speed. I don't think that's accurate. But anyway, it's a fun game, and that's kind of how this tank is played. It's a supporting tank, but it has the ability at specific points in the game to take the fight to the enemy and be that frontline tank. Now, you have to choose that time carefully because, of course, you know, the battle ends, so of course we have to kill each other. But it's important to recognize when those situations are, and that's key for this tank. And it's a skill you learn from like the Chaffee and the Walker Bulldog and the Pershing and the Shermans that predate it, when you start running into bigger and badder enemies like tigers and things like that. So let's move on to the next replay, shall we? So I didn't realize it when I was picking the clips that I picked 2 Kuban maps. This is the realistic battle, and we're on Kuban, and I do apologize for that. I try and mix up the maps, but these are just the 2 games I wanted to include. So, you know, I guess that's just how it is. But I'm in the Patton, I mean obviously, and I'm driving up over here, and we got a little bit of team killing going on. That's always a good way to start the game. I decided to audible and not go over there because that'd just be a bold decision. And instead I'm going to push around this corner. I've had decent success coming to this corner, going around, clearing the, what's it called, the ridge from a diagonal. Usually you can get side shots into tanks. And then moving forward next to the little bunker, and then pushing over onto that ridge. Usually that works out pretty well because by that time you'll be able to, you probably will know if there's enemies around to the left of that corner. And if there are, then you have to, you change your strategy. But if there isn't, you can move up onto the ridge, which is nice. Shoot the AI a little bit, nice little fire for him. Back up to reload, and now I did see a heavy tank, but right when I pulled back, but doesn't seem to be anyone right now. So I'm going to push forward on the left side of this bunker, keeping myself behind it just in case there is someone over there. The AI burned up, that's nice. Now I'm going to start moving forward because we do have a lot of tanks pushing forward to my right, which indicates to me that it's safe to do so. And if it isn't, hopefully they get shot first. But there's a Tiger 2 over there who's going to be pushing down along the side. There's also an enemy Jagdpanther down over that way. I was going to wait for that IS-2 to move a little bit more, but he didn't. But it looks like I wasn't going to hit the Jagdtiger anyway. Or not Jagdtiger. Jagdpanther. Oop. Rip IS-2. So, my goal here is that I see an opportunity here to move up and get over onto this ridge and really start to cause problems for the enemy. I'm relatively safe from the Jagdpanther if he's still alive down there. And I'm in a very solid position to cause tremendous issues for whoever is over there on that corner. And I make the decision here that I'm okay with being shot from my right, so long as I only take one and I'm able to duck down behind this ridge. So I should have not even tried to stop there, but you know, keep on moving. The back of the turret somehow took it. Now I'm on the back side of the slope, and here's this lovely fat king tiger. And I really should have just gone for engine fire, you know. For some reason I thought that would be a, you know, good hit, but you know, I should just be going for engine fire here. And there we go. I finally do it, and I think I'll get the last crew member and set him on fire. So now it's time to turn, and there's a very strong enemy push towards our flag. So I'm going to start sending shells down that way, and this is a position I feel pretty good in the Patton. We're at fairly long range, and for most part only my turret is showing. Well, you know, not just my turret, but I'm in a decent position where I can back up fairly easily. My flanks are secure, and I have a sort of a window to shoot these guys that's very doable. Right, so if that shell was maybe a foot to the left, probably would have knocked out that Ferdinand, which would have been nice. But just keeping in mind where I am in relation to the enemy. This Panther's sitting in the cap circle, and I actually have a line of sight there. So I'm just going to pound this Panther as he sits in the cap circle. Stop capping the zone. Okay, don't care. There we go. Penetrated. Got a crew member and lit him on fire. So now I'm just going to sit here and pound away because it seems like he's immobilized. And there we go. Next shot sets him on fire and kills him. It looks like the shell actually like fragmented twice there, which was kind of interesting. Tiger 2H moving across the valley over there, but I'm going to switch targets and go for the Ferdinand. And the reason I went for the Ferdinand is, in my opinion, the Ferdinand's a harder machine to take out. So I felt like it was the, I guess, priority target. And I already know the range to that guy there, but I did notice that when on the hit cam, his gun was actually moving back over here. So I backed up, and it looked like it was a good decision. But I don't really want to engage this guy like this. I can, but it'd be much better if I could do something else. So I make the decision that, well, I come to the conclusion that a majority of their team is there. And I feel like that's a fairly safe one to say. Our forces are pushing into their cap, and it seems like they're relatively unopposed. So a majority of their force must be down over there. I take a hit and get set on fire, but I'm pretty lucky, and only my transmission is damaged, or something's damaged, but it's not critical, and I can still keep on trucking. Tiger 2P over there. My first shell misses. His shell goes short. Now, I've decided that I don't want to, you know, shoot at a Tiger 2 that, you know, when my first shell misses, I don't like sticking around, because usually that means, you know, sure, I got more information to shoot at them with, but if their first shell hit me or missed me, they have more information as well. You know, so basically you're creating a situation where the outcome is becoming more negative, where either they're going to hit you and damage you, and maybe you'll kill them, or they're going to kill you, or you'll just kill them, but two of the three aren't very good. You know, being damaged isn't good, and being killed isn't good. So that was the logic there. It's always better to put yourself in a position where the enemy aren't going to be shooting at you. You know, whether that's by surrounding yourself with teammates, or having a very helpful SU-100 shoot at the enemy tank first. So it's a Tiger P, send my first shell, and the SU-100 is going to back up and plant a shell into him as well. There we go, set on fire. That's nice. Well, I'm going to try and take advantage of the situation he's caused. Right? I'm going to try and use the terrain here to move along the cap circle, because he's backing up. He's all the way down the hill now, which means it's unlikely he can actually see me while all this is going on. So I'm going to make a little bit of a rush on him. And this is what I was talking about when it's kind of strategically deciding that this is a moment I can aggressively push forward and take an opportunity. Right? He's He's damaged. He's unlikely to be looking at me. He's probably repairing. So if I can get along his side or something like that, I can probably just knock him out in a couple of quick shots. Also, helps that friendly bombs are above. But I come up here. There he is. He's not even looking at me. Go for an ammo rack shot. Kind of just gut the turret. Killed a crew member instead. But now I'm going to put myself behind this bunker and use it as cover against enemy troops. Well, tanks, really. Good thing the bomber got knocked out. That Yag Panther is about a billion yards away, but, you know, first shot connects, that's nice, and killed him. Because, why not? And another enemy tank gets knocked out. And this battle's kind of turned. I thought the battle was in doubt when they had so many tanks around our cap circle. But, you know, we were able to push it back, and now we're just going to feast on AI and things like that. And it is important, I think, with tanks that you use primarily APCR on to learn ammo rack locations, learn crew member locations, things like that. Maybe fire, you know, where to shoot if you want to fire, where to shoot if you want a gunner, where to shoot, well, I mean, if you want to disable a gun to shoot the barrel. But, you know, where the ammo racks is when you just need a kill, you know, things like that. Ways to deal with tanks in specific ways. So, for example, with my IS-4. Generally with the IS-4, I don't so much care about as killing them quickly because I know I have the armor to take it. I care about stopping them from flanking me. So a lot of times I go for engine shots. I go for shots that I think will disable their transmission, disable their engine, set them on fire, kill their driver, things like that. Because if my first shell doesn't kill them, then they're going to be able to get up alongside me, and I'm not going to be able to fire another shell, probably. So it's better, in my opinion, there goes another Yag Panther. It's better, in my opinion, to, when I'm driving a slow, fat, heavy tank, to make it so that they have to stay where I want them to be and put them at the disadvantage, rather than letting them get close and putting me at the disadvantage. So, you know, I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. So, like, if a Panther's charging me in my eyes for, you know, a medium tank, I'm going to shoot it in its front hull and try and go for the engine gut shot that's going to prevent him from continuing to charge me. And there's a Panther. Looped a shell right into his upper glacis, which set him on fire. It's going to be a serious issue for him, and he just burns out, which is nice. We have almost capped their zone, and I believe the enemy are going to be completely out of good old tanks. And when you run out of tanks, that's usually not good for business. Actually, I don't think they actually do run out of tanks. I can't remember. But we're going to win pretty handily. And I think that's another example of kind of how you can play this tank. If you see opportunities to be aggressive and kind of take advantage of situations, you should, because that's what this tank's really good at. But it can also be sort of the more frontline medium, but it will never be able to do what, you know, Tiger 2s do, or, you know, some of the other heavy tanks can do, which is just take hits all day long. It's just not built for that. It's a medium tank. You know, it's not a heavy tank. So just don't play it like a heavy tank, and you'll be fine. But let's move on to the final opinion, shall we? Alright, so opinion time. What do I think of the M46 Patton? This is a very solid medium tank. This is the classic sort of standard tank where it's very much so. Okay, there's three elements I think that make a good tank. Speed, or, well, I'm going to lump speed, maneuverability, engine power, things like that, all into maneuverability. This thing is quick, and it turns really well, and it's a good little knife. It's good at knife fighting, as well as having a 90mm gun. So it checks that box. Gun. You know, it needs a good gun. This 90mm is a good gun. I really like it. I think it's a very powerful gun. And with the APCR rounds, it's very surgical, and you can often get lucky in one-shot tanks, as you saw in a couple of the replays. Well, in both. Third, it needs armor. It needs to have effective armor. Well, that's where this tank kind of falls off, right? It has the speed, has the maneuverability, has that, has the gun, you know. The only thing it lacks is a little bit of armor. However, the reason it has speed and maneuverability is because it doesn't have as much armor. And on a tank like this, given its role, I like it as it is. I think the armor is acceptable. The gun mantlet's pretty good. The upper hull is not very good, but it does have good gun depression, so you can take advantage of hull down positions. So at least it has that going for it. If this thing had like 3 degrees of gun depression like Russian heavy tanks, then I wouldn't like it very much, because sure, it's got a good turret front, but you have to go all the way over the hill and expose your weak armor to take a shot. But that's not the case with this one. And the ability to reposition and sort of change the engagement, I think, is really, really important. And this tank does that very, very well. It's sort of, I don't want to say it follows the same line as the Walker Bulldog and the Chaffee and the Locust, because it's different. It's a medium tank. It's not a light tank. It's not a reconnaissance tank. This is a medium fighting tank. It's meant to it's meant to be in the front line somewhere. There's other tanks that are meant to take hits. This one, it can maybe take a hit or two, but it's designed to work together in like a little team to pick apart the enemy. And the competition it runs into, it can deal with pretty well. And that competition being the 6.7 battle rating, which is, for the Germans, Tiger IIs and Yak Panthers, Ferdinands as well. And Ferdinands give most things trouble, but this thing can, has good penetration, so at close range it can deal with the front, or it can just set it on fire via the lower plate there, and there's ways to deal with it, or the shoulders, Russian tanks that this thing will face. Alright, T-44s. Okay, you can deal with those. You can penetrate its upper glacis. You can penetrate the front of the turret. I usually go for front of the turret, but that's just me, because the upper glacis is sloped so much that it can actually be kind of tricky. So T-44s, IS-2s. All right, well, you have plenty of penetration to deal with the front of IS-2s. Generally, just go for the turret. I mean, the turret is 120 millimeters, and with APCR, it's fairly easy to penetrate that. So, that's not a problem. SU-100s, you can deal with those. Just APCR through the driver's hatch, and then APCR sort of in the lower part of the hull to finish the thing off. And, that's kind of it. IS-3s, I mean, honestly, the shoulders of the tank are pretty good targets. That's usually where I go for. You can also go for, really just the shoulders of the tank are the best spot. But you do have to be a little more surgical. And actually, from the front, there's some tanks where you can actually just penetrate the ammo rack, even if it's behind the upper plate and like the side walls of the tanks. Just shoot down those side walls and you'll hit the ammo rack. So all in all, I think it's a very solid tank. I don't think it's like tremendously powerful, but I don't think it's underpowered either. I think it's a good solid tank. I definitely prefer it over the Panthers. I like it a lot more than Panthers, mainly because it has superior penetration with its APCR rounds, has a higher caliber gun, has faster turret rotation, I think faster. It feels faster. We're going to check really fast just so I'm not, saying the wrong thing. But let's go to the Panther 6.7 battle rating. I'll just say this one. 12 degrees of turret rotation, so I was right. Right? So this tank, it has a better gun mantlet than the Panthers. That's without question. So I like this tank better than Panthers. And the Panthers are not bad tanks, right? They have a role and they do a decent job at it. This tank has a role and it does a better job at it than other tanks of different nationalities in the same role. So take that as you will. I like it. I think it's a good tank. I'm excited to get to eventually unlock the M47. But this is a very solid tank, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's very similar to the Pershing. If you played the Pershing, take those skills you learn in the Pershing and apply them to the Patton, and you'll do just fine. All right. So, yeah, that'll be it for this review. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, go ahead and put them in the comments section. I'll be more than happy to read them. And if I don't reply, I'm I apologize. It's just, you know, things are just hectic, you know, school, all this, lots of things I got to do. And sometimes I don't, I just, maybe one day I just won't find the time to get to the comment section and be able to respond. But hopefully me and Phil can keep on top of that and keep going in a positive way for that. Because I do like responding to comments, and I think it's very important. And I do enjoy doing that. So, you know, hopefully I can find a little more time for that. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. I've been Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.